Welcome to the third webinar in the Inspirational Authorship webinar series. Hi, I'm Joyce Ross. In this webinar, we will study Golden Writing Key number 3, part 2, and Golden Writing Key number 4. Golden Writing Key number 3, part 2 is maintain a consistent point of view. Golden Writing Key number 4 is bring your characters to life via actions and reactions. Don't simply narrate your story, craft scenes. Point of view refers to the perspective or viewpoint from which a piece of writing is recounted or narrated. There are three main points of view: first person, second person, and third person. Third person point of view is divided into two subviews: third person limited point of view and third person omniscient point of view. Omniscient means all-seeing. As a writer, you need to be aware of the various points of view so that you can make an educated decision about which one would be best for a particular piece of writing. For instance, though a memoir or personal essay is generally written in a first-person narrative, the accepted practice is to write one's author bio in a third-person narrative. Additionally, if a book cover contains a promotional blurb, a second-person narrative is often the best option. Choosing a point of view centers on deciding from whose perspective you'd like to narrate your prose. In the chart on the screen, as a storyteller, you're the butterfly. In each point of view, you may only narrate the feelings, thoughts, and motives of the corresponding gold heads, not the black heads. I think of the various points of view as being based on whose head I can get into as a narrator and whose heads are in blackout mode. If I can get into a character's head, then I'm free to tell readers what that character is thinking and feeling and what motivates him or her. However, if a character's head is in blackout mode, then whatever I want readers to know about him or her must be revealed via dialogue or through the observations of a character whose head I can get into. I'll talk more about this in a few minutes. Let's look at the simplest way to distinguish viewpoints. The easiest way to differentiate viewpoints is by the pronouns used. First person point of view uses the pronouns I, me, we, us, my, mine, ours, and our. The perspective or point of view is solely that of the narrator, who is also a character. Example: I was born in North Bay, Ontario. My family moved to Victoria, British Columbia in 1964. As an inspirational author sharing your heart-mind wisdom, you will most likely narrate your story in the first-person point of view or from an I-me perspective. Second-person point of view uses the pronouns you and your, yours. In second-person point of view, the reader is the character whose perspective the author narrates. A second-person narrative can feel overly intimate, making it an uncommon choice for fictional prose such as a novel. However, it is often used in advertising and in technical and business writings. Here's an example. You will be amazed and thrilled by what you're about to learn. Your sales volume will triple within months, maybe weeks. Third person point of view uses the pronouns he, she, him, her, and his, her, hers, and its. Unlike in first person narrative, in third person point of view, the narrator is not also a character. Instead, the narrator is an intangible entity that recounts the thoughts and feelings and motives of a single character or multiple characters. Example: he left the meeting excited and hopeful. Today was definitely his luckiest in a long while. The two subviews of third person point of view are third person limited point of view and third person omniscient point of view. In third person limited point of view, the story is narrated from the protagonist's or the main character's perspective. In third person omniscient point of view, the story is narrated from two or multiple characters' perspectives. Let's examine the various points of view more closely. As mentioned earlier, first person point of view uses the pronouns I, me, we, us, my, mine, our, ours. The perspective or point of view is solely that of the character who is also the narrator. As such, the narrator can only tell readers about the motives, thoughts, and feelings of the character that represents him or her. To inform readers about what motivates another character or what another character thinks and feels, the narrator must do so via the observations of his or her character in the story or through dialogue. Here are a few examples of first-person point of view. From my perspective, winning was important to my sister. When she'd lose at a card game or bike race, she'd stamp her feet and cry. Same sentiment written in a different way would be, judging by her comical tantrum whenever she lost a card game or bike race, my sister placed a high priority on winning. Or you could instead write, when I asked my sister why she seemed angry whenever she lost a card game or bike race, she said, winning is important to me. And lastly, whenever my sister lost a card game or bike race, she'd stamp her feet and cry. When narrating in a first-person point of view, it's incorrect to state another character's motives, feelings, or thoughts without indicating how you came to know about that character's inner self. For instance, it would be incorrect to simply write, my sister hated losing. How do you know for certain that she hated losing? What's your proof? Maybe she hated looking stupid or feeling inferior. Maybe she got angry because she thought you were cheating. Readers are aware that a story written in a first-person narrative is likely to be subjective or biased towards the narrator's opinions and judgments. This is why in the sentence examples I included jargon such as, from my perspective, judging by, and seemed. Because I didn't claim to be 100% certain about my observations, my writing is credible. In the dialogue example, my sister's answer is proof of what would otherwise be an assumption. All of the chapters in the Heart, Mind, Wisdom collection are written in a first-person narrative. As you'll most likely write your inspirational journey in a first-person narrative, let's take a look at an example. Here's an excerpt from J. Dennis Roberts' chapter, Fearless No Matter What, in Heart, Mind, Wisdom collection number 1. The judge's words resounded in my ears. Against my better judgment, JR, I'm giving you a chance to redeem yourself. Take it or leave it. It's up to you. Never in a million years did I think the Army would become my new home. It was tough. Mornings were the worst. 5:30 roll call, 6:30 mess hall, 7 parade deck. You get what you deserve, JR, I mumbled as I rubbed the steam off the bathroom mirror. Now structured, my life would never be the same. Dennis is an amazing person. I hope you read his entertaining and inspiring chapter, Fearless No Matter What, in Heart, Mind, Wisdom collection number 1. As mentioned earlier, second-person point of view uses the pronouns you and your, yours, and the reader is the character from whose perspective the author narrates. I also said that second-person point of view is often used in advertising and in technical and business communications. How-to books, for instance, are mostly written in a second-person narrative. A prime example is cookbooks, where you is implied in the instructions. Here's an example taken from a cookbook. Take the beef out of the fridge 30 minutes before it goes into the oven. Preheat the oven to 240 degrees Celsius or 475 Fahrenheit. There's no need to peel the vegetables. And you can see there that the for you is implied. So there's no need for you to peel the vegetables. Just give them a wash and roughly chop them. Advertisers sometimes use second-person point of view to evoke imagery and feelings in listeners' or readers' minds. Here's an ad example. Imagine gazing out at the ocean, the warm sun on your skin, a gentle breeze blowing through your hair, a martini in your hand. What do you feel? Peace? Contentment? As though you have finally arrived? Authors often use a second-person narrative to sell potential readers on their books. Here's the example from the back of our Heart, Mind, Wisdom collection number 1. A must-read for everyone. The Heart, Mind, Wisdom collection chronicles the courageous and inspiring journeys of everyday people. Their stories will lift you emotionally and equip you with practical insights for living your ideal life. To assist you in finding the wisdom that will speak to your soul, each book is divided into 5 restorative categories: bouncing back, divine connection, hope, healing from loss, and self-actualization. As mentioned earlier, third-person point of view uses the pronouns he, she, him, her, and his, her, its. In third-person point of view, the narrator is not a character. Instead, the narrator is an intangible entity that recounts the observations, thoughts, feelings, and motives of a single character or multiple characters. As third-person point of view provides the greatest flexibility to authors, it's the most commonly used narrative in literature. In third-person point of view, the narrator refers to a character by name or as he, she, it, or they, but never as I or we, which is first person, or you, which is second person. In grammatically correct prose, animals are referred to by name or as it. Example: Patricia's dog headed straight toward her, its tail wagging. I sometimes ignore this grammar rule when writing about a character's pet in a third-person narrative or my own pet in a first-person narrative. Here's an example. Patricia's dog Charlie headed straight toward her, his tail wagging. As I said earlier, in third-person limited point of view, the story is narrated from the protagonist's, or the main character's, perspective. That's why there's a butterfly in the yellow head. The narrator can get inside the protagonist's head and tell readers what the protagonist is thinking, feeling, and what motivates him or her. As you can see in the chart, every other character's thoughts, feelings, and motives are in blackout mode. The only way to inform readers about what secondary characters are thinking and feeling, or what their motives might be, is through dialogue and the protagonist's observations. In third-person omniscient point of view, the story is narrated from 2 or multiple characters' perspectives. In the chart, no characters' heads are in blackout mode. The story can be narrated from any character's perspective. Here's a potential danger for new writers: clumsy head hopping. Head hopping refers to narration in a scene that hops back and forth between 2 or multiple characters' points of view. It's as though the narrator is hopping from head to head, hence the name head hopping. Here's an example of sloppy head hopping. Lowering the menu, Patricia gazed into Merrick's eyes. He looked tired. She knew he'd been working too hard, was worried that he might soon collapse from exhaustion. Merrick didn't miss that his wife was trying to gauge how tired he was. He knew she was worried that he was working too many hours. "I'm okay," he said, reaching across the table to take her hand. Arriving with their meals, the waitress noted that the couple was genuinely in love. What's sloppy about this example is that 2 characters are both thinking about Merrick's state of tiredness. Yawn. And readers don't care what the waitress does or doesn't observe. Injecting her 2 cents worth takes readers out of the story as they wonder if the waitress is about to become a main character. Here's my seasoned advice. If you're a beginning author, stick to narrating in first-person point of view or third-person limited point of view. After you've published a book or 2, if you want, try writing in a third-person omniscient point of view. It's always fun to experiment. Wanting to ensure that readers feel closely connected to both the hero and heroine, romance writers are notorious head hoppers. If you decide to write an inspirational romance novel like The Kindness Ambassador, do what I do. Only switch character points of view between chapters, not within a chapter. At the beginning of this lesson, I mentioned that regardless of the point of view used in a book or novel, author bios are commonly written in a third-person narrative. Let's look at J. Dennis Roberts' bio from Heart, Mind, Wisdom collection number 1. J. Dennis Roberts' story is fearless no matter what. Born with Horner syndrome, J. Dennis Robert quickly learned that the keys to fitting in and making friends were ingenuity and fearlessness. Though admirable qualities, when younger, his ingenious and fearless endeavors often invited trouble. Dennis's free-spirited nature led him into a lifelong love at entrepreneurial ventures, the first of which was shoveling snow off neighborhood driveways. His chapter, Fearless No Matter What, is a delightful glimpse into his youthful shenanigans, including one that landed him in front of a judge. Dennis lives in Surrey, British Columbia. He enjoys organic gardening, creating, and working with his hands. He doesn't believe in giving up or shying away from any circumstance, predicament, or challenge. Dennis is available to talk to audiences about being fearless no matter what. He can be contacted via info@heartmindeffect.com. Dennis is an amazing and resilient person. I really do hope you get a chance to read his chapter. It's pretty entertaining and it's actually quite funny. Anyway, so that's in Fearless No Matter What by Dennis Robert in Heart, Mind, Wisdom Collection number 1. It's time to move on to golden writing key number 4. Bring your characters to life via actions and reactions. Don't simply narrate your story, craft scenes. Scene writing is the technique that will most improve your writing. The first rule of scene writing is to begin in the middle of the action. Think of the middle of the action as being the high point of an event or story, which may or may not be the actual middle of the event or story. For instance, if you were crafting a scene about being smacked in the head when you were a kid, there would likely be at least 3 parts to that story. 1, what you did or didn't do that infuriated whoever smacked you in the head. 2, the actual smacking incident. And 3, the aftermath of the smacking incident. In this example, the actual middle of the action is the smacking incident. This would be a great place to begin a scene. However, if what you did to infuriate somebody was pull the heads off all of your sister's Barbie dolls, you could also begin in the middle of the action of that scene. Perhaps that scene would begin with you ripping the head off the first doll. You could also begin in the middle of the scene about the aftermath of the smacking incident. Maybe with a play-by-play scene of an imagined fisticuffs with your sister, or a scene with you tossing your clothes into a suitcase and mumbling about running away. Let's look at the various components of a well-crafted scene. There's actually 7 components. So here's the 7 components of scene writing. Physical setting and time, descriptive details, mood, action, suspense, conflict, tension, unspoken dialogue, and spoken dialogue. Advancing one scene component at a time, I'll now demonstrate the 7 components of scene writing. Okay, I'm going to ask you to bear with me as I go through adding the 7 components. It's going to be a bit repetitive, but it's the best way I know how to really show you how the 7 components can make your story come to life. So here we go. The first thing you do is establish setting and time. So setting and time add context, making your story seem more real. So the first sentence is, "The winter wind howled through the forest." In the second step, you add in descriptive details because they appeal to the reader's senses. So, stripped bare of crimson maple and spotted yellow oak leaves, the winter wind howled through the forest. The air smelled musty and tasted moldy. Component 3 is put in some mood or description that evokes feelings in the reader. Stripped bare of crimson maple and spotted yellow oak leaves, the winter wind howled through the half-dead forest. Rancid with decay, the air smelled musty and tasted moldy. So we're getting a deeper and deeper picture of what's happening in the story. 4 is add in action. Stripped bare of crimson maple and spotted yellow oak leaves, the winter wind howled through the half-dead forest. Rancid with decay, the air smelled musty and tasted moldy. Alternating between stuffing my freezing hands into my jean jacket and cupping them over my aching ears, I raced ahead. 5 is add in some suspense, conflict, or tension. A half hour passed and I was no closer to finding my truck. Stripped bare of crimson maple and spotted yellow oak leaves, the winter wind howled through the half-dead forest. Rancid with decay, the air smelled musty and tasted moldy. Alternating between stuffing my freezing hands into my jean jacket and cupping them over my aching ears, I raced ahead. Snow was imminent. I had to get out before nightfall. In step 6, you add in some inner thoughts, which is called unspoken dialogue. A half hour passed and I was no closer to finding my truck. Stripped bare of crimson maple and spotted yellow oak leaves, the winter wind howled through the half-dead forest. Rancid with decay, the air smelled musty and tasted moldy. Alternating between stuffing my freezing hands into my jean jacket and cupping them over my aching ears, I raced ahead. Snow was imminent. I had to get out before nightfall. How could I be so dim-witted? Underdressed, no lunch, no thermos of hot coffee. Deliberately left my cell phone behind. It would serve me right if I froze to death. Undoubtedly, everyone would blame my demise on the elements, but I'd know what really killed me. Stupidity. And here's the last component. Component 7, which is spoken dialogue. A half hour passed and I was no closer to finding my truck. Stripped bare of crimson maple and spotted yellow oak leaves, the winter wind howled through the half-dead forest. Rancid with decay, the air smelled musty and tasted moldy. Alternating between stuffing my freezing hands into my jean jacket and cupping them over my aching ears, I raced ahead. Snow was imminent. I had to get out before nightfall. How could I be so dim-witted? Underdressed, no lunch, no thermos of hot coffee. Deliberately left my cell phone behind. It would serve me right if I froze to death. Undoubtedly, everyone would blame my demise on the elements, but I'd know what really killed me. Stupidity. Stopping and craning backward to rid a stabbing side cramp, I examined the dark tumbling clouds. I was in trouble. Deep trouble. God, it's up to you, buddy. I don't pray often. Okay, never. But it's kind of a fun story. I'm going to read it now without any colorful words, so we can really get a feel for the 7 components of scene writing in a little paragraph of a story. So here we go. A half hour passed and I was no closer to finding my truck. Stripped bare of crimson maple and spotted yellow oak leaves, the winter wind howled through the half-dead forest. Rancid with decay, the air smelled musty and tasted moldy. Alternating between stuffing my freezing hands into my jean jackets and cupping them over my aching ears, I raced ahead. Snow was imminent. I had to get out before nightfall. How could I be so dim-witted? Underdressed, no lunch, no thermos of hot coffee. Deliberately left my cell phone behind. It would serve me right if I froze to death. Undoubtedly, everyone would blame my demise on the elements, but I'd know what really killed me. Stupidity. Stopping and craning backward to rid a stabbing side cramp, I examined the dark tumbling clouds. I was in trouble. Deep trouble. God, it's up to you, buddy. I don't pray often. Okay, never. But I hope you enjoyed the demonstration on the 7 components of scene writing. Let's read one of my favorite scenes in Heart, Mind, Wisdom Collection number 1. It's written by E. Patricia Connor and it's titled Heart Connections, a Matrix. It was then that I heard happy whistling coming from someone behind me. So welcoming was the tune that I quickly turned around. To my amazement, I spotted a man rummaging through the garbage can outside the store. He was in his 50s, dressed in tattered clothing, and was closely guarding his shopping cart with one hand as he sifted through the garbage can with the other. Find anything interesting? I asked. Why did I ask that? Always, was his answer. How can I not find anything interesting in a container like this one? There's so much to choose from. You just need to know where to look. Not an expected answer from a homeless person, but a curious one. He had my attention. I took a closer look at my conversation partner. He was a nice-looking man with sandy-colored hair and blue eyes. It wasn't so much his physical characteristics that I noticed, but his aura. He exuded lightness and happiness. For me, our friendly exchange was both disconcerting and comforting. We were connecting. A total stranger whose money troubles were obvious, but whose heart beat with the same love as mine. As he stood straighter and faced me more directly, an energetic circle encompassed us. I was very much aware that the customers coming in and out of the store were staring our way as they walked around him and me, not in between. Perhaps they didn't want to disturb us. Dragging his cart behind him, he closed the distance between us just a little. As he did so, I noticed 2 colorful windmill flowers on sticks, which he'd firmly secured at the front of his cart. "Would you like a flower?" he offered. I declined, but complimented him on his decorations. I can't have real ones, you know. Not where I live now. I used to have a garden in Alberta. It was in a nice backyard. My wife and I gardened together when the weather warmed up. The kids and I played touch football there. They don't speak to me anymore. His words faltered as sadness swept across his face like a cloud blocking the sun. But before I could comment, he piped right back up and said, "Maybe I'll one day talk to them again." "Maybe sooner than you think," I offered, smiling against the ache in my chest. With a nod of his head, his lips curled slightly as he bid his farewell. It seemed that he wanted to be alone with the treasured memories he pulled along with his shopping cart full of reclaimed gems. Taking $10 from my wallet, I handed it to him. "Go get yourself a good breakfast." After thanking me, he walked away, whistling his happy tune. Frozen in place, I contemplated what had just happened. The encounter left me with warmth in my heart and a smile on my face. I truly connected with this homeless stranger, perhaps even brightened his day as he had mine. Patricia Connor is a masterful scene writer. I hope you read her chapter in Heart, Mind, Wisdom collection number 1. This completes today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed it and feel better equipped to tell your story. Today's exercise is write a 200 to 300 word essay that includes all 7 scene writing components. Afterward, if you'd like to email it to me, I'd gladly read it and give you my thoughts and feed forward. So my email address is info@heartmindeffect.com. Thanks for watching.